Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So, today we're going to be discussing a couple of things. Mainly, we're going to be discussing the addition of Lord Dominik's Regard, what it is, what it does, etc. And then we're also going to discuss ADC builds in general, how it's going to go. We're going to talk about how I think GA is basically going to come back into ADC builds and why it wasn't there previously, why people weren't building GA previously, and also, we're going to be talking about, or rather, not talking about, but we're going to be showing all of the latest ADC builds for every single ADC. So, of course, I decided to put this as part of the Wild Rift Fundamentals series, because at the end of the day, I'm kind of explaining concepts here, but in general, this is just a good video to just see and know what all these new changes are. So, first up, let's go and take a look at the item itself, Lord Dominik's Regard. So, over here, we have LDR, so I'm gonna call Lord Dominik's Regard as a short form, LDR or Lord Doms. So those are kind of the short forms for it. So LDR, what it does, it gives you 35 attack damage, not the most in the world, 25% crit rate like every other crit item, and of course you get the 16 to 30% armor penetration passive, as well as the rapid shot, which is if you're not engaged in combat, your next attack on an enemy champion gives you 80% attack speed just for that one attack. So the rapid shot passive is no big deal. The 35 attack damage is nothing to really write home about. What that makes this item really good is the fact it gives you both crit rate and armor penetration. So as we all know, generally every ADC has to build armor penetration as their third or fourth item at the latest, because there are going to be champions on the enemy team who have built armor items, or any champion scales naturally gains more armor. So basically it gets to a point where building another crit item is not worth it, and the goal is more effectively used on building an armor penetration item. So your armor penetration item choices are, of course, the new LDR, the Serelda's Grudge, as well as the Maul Reminder. So Maul Reminder, of course, gives the Grievous Wounds, Serelda's Grudge gives you the slow, and now LDR gives you the crit. That's basically the main difference between the three of them. So now, what makes LDR such a good item? Well, basically, as we all know, majority of ADCs build crit. So you want to get to 100% crit as soon as possible. But because you used to have to build an armor penetration item as your third or fourth item, you cannot get to 100% crit until your last item, because one item would be your boots. You would have two crit items at the front. Let's say you have a Serelda's Grudge here, so that's not a crit item. You have a third crit item and then a fourth crit item, so you need to wait all the way until your last item before you can reach 100% crit, which is the aim of the game. But with the new LDR, you can build this as your third or fourth item still, but it doesn't actually matter where you build LDR in. So for example, in this example, Caitlyn built, if I build LDR as my fourth item, I'm still gonna hit 100% crit on my fourth item. So basically what this allows you to do is get to 100% crit on your fourth item. So this is basically just, it's gonna be really strong because you hit your power spike of getting full crit items sooner. And of course, not every game reaches 4 or 5 items in the first place. So sometimes when you get to your third item, let's say if I'm building Maul Reminder in this spot, I'm not getting any crit from that. So when I get to my third item, which most games you generally get to 3 items, it's gonna already make a difference when you have the LDR instead of the Maul Reminder. And so now the next question you guys might be thinking is, how about against healing teams? Like, let's say if there's a Soraka on the enemy team, there's a Mundo or something like that, then I'm not gonna have any Grievous Wounds. Well, the answer comes in the form of the Executioner's Calling. So you want to build the Executioner's Calling basically early on in the game somewhere. Now if I can actually find it, so here, Executioner's Calling, what you generally want to do is your build's gonna look something like this. So okay, you can't actually see it because they only show full items in that view. So basically, if we take a look over here, Executioner's Calling is the last item here. So you're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items plus boots. So your Executioner's Calling is not gonna be your literal last item, but sometimes you're gonna get it, for example, after you get your Storm Razor, or for example, after you complete your 2 item power spike. So you want to get the Executioner's Calling somewhere in the earlier stages of the game. And when you reach 4 full items, you're gonna have these 4 items. You're gonna have the Storm Razor, the IE, Lord Dominik's, as well as the Rapid Fire Cannon, and you have an extra Executioner's Calling. When you want to get your last item, which in this case is GA, you sell the Executioner's Calling, and then you get a GA. By this time, hopefully your team has already gotten Grievous Wounds. On, let's say, your support has Oblivion Orb, or like your tank has Bramble Vest, and you wouldn't actually need the Grievous Wounds anymore yourself, and getting the GA is of course going to be more important than having the Grievous Wounds in majority of situations. So that is basically it. So now we're gonna get into the next section, which is why GA is making a comeback. Now the answer is obvious here, because now that you have 4 crit items, you need something to fill up the last slot. So previously, the reason why Bloodthirster was a very popular option. So let's revert this back to the old build. So let's say we have this here and we have this here. The reason why we used to go for Bloodthirster as a last item is number 1, of course, to get 100% crit rate, because remember, Maul Reminder didn't give you crit. So this gets you to 100% crit. That's the first thing. And the last item generally is about survivability, because by the time you hit 4 items, your damage is more than enough. So this is about survivability. So the Bloodthirster, what it gives you is the Bloodsworn Shield, as well as the 15% physical vamp. So this basically allows you to increase your sustain by a lot, and in fights as you DPS, this is going to gain so much health that is going to be pretty much equivalent to a resurrection from the GA if you are able to stay safe in DPS. Now of course, the downside of Bloodthirster versus GA is the fact that with GA, if you get instantly one-shot by a Rengar, for example, you can still revive, but with Bloodthirster, if you get one-shot, you're just dead, because you know, you have no time to lifesteal anything. So there are pros and cons to both Bloodthirster as well as GA. So the main reason why GA was not built on ADCs previously was, the first reason is that it didn't give crit. So just building Bloodthirster is going to be better because it gives you about equivalent value, unless you're getting one shot by an assassin. It gives you about equivalent value, but it gives you the additional value of the crit. And the second reason, of course, is that GA's cost was increased. So it's like 400 gold. I think it used to be like 3200 gold, and they increased the price by 200 if I'm not wrong. So it's gotten more expensive, basically. So people started realizing that if my GA costs more than my Bloodthirster, and Bloodthirster gives me more damage as well as relatively equivalent survivability, why not just build Bloodthirster? So that's why GA on ADCs basically became dead for a while. But now that LDR is in the picture, now with the LDR, as you guys can see, we will have 100% crit here, so we don't need a Bloodthirster anymore, because this puts us at 125% crit, which of course the maximum is 100, so this no longer makes sense. What makes more sense now is going for GA. In almost all cases, or in certain cases, you want to go for a different defensive item. For example, in Maw of Malmortius, in very, very fringe situations, maybe a Death's Dance. You can go for a Wit's End if you want the attack speed instead of the attack damage. And then you can also even get other items like Divine Sunder or Triforce if you really want to. So this basically opens up your item options by a lot and lets you get 100% crit even faster. Now of course, if you so choose, you could even go for both Bloodthirster and GA. So you could go for something like this, where you have both Bloodthirster and GA for, you know, insane amounts of sustain and survivability. But personally, I don't think Bloodthirster is needed anymore, because you have the GA and because, you know, you're just really strong in general. So that is an option that you can of course go for if you want. Alright, so now that we've got all of that out of the way, I'm gonna briefly just show every single ADC's build. Now, most ADC's build are gonna look relatively the same, relatively similar to this. So we're just gonna go through, and I'm gonna talk about a few anomalies. The first anomaly is Vayne. Vayne normally goes for these two items at the beginning for the unhit lifesteal. So generally she goes for all of these like after that, and she doesn't actually go for any penetration because she does true damage. So LDR not really gonna affect Vayne. On Jinx, this is pretty much gonna be her new build. Of course, Runans can be changed for a energized item. And next up we have Jhin. Now Jhin, again, you could go for Bloodthirster here instead if you want. And after that we have Kai'Sa. So Kaisa, the last item is of course Flex if you're going for the crit build. And if you're going for the hybrid build, where is my hybrid build here? If you're going for the hybrid build, you can still go for LDR as your last item. And next up, Lucian. Now personally, I think that Lucian does fine without LDR. I think that actually this is not the latest build I use on Lucian. I actually do something more like this now. So I think that Lucian having Seralda's Grudge is... I'm not too sure about this yet, but I think having Seralda's Grudge is really useful on Lucian because of how you cannot escape his ult. But I can definitely see people going for LDR instead just to get that you know, quad crit item at the start and then going for a GA last item. So we'll have to see for Lucian, but I think Lucian may be able to get away with still going with Seralda's, but I think more likely than not is he's gonna go for LDR as well, but I'm not too sure about that. Now with Tristana, I'm planning to make a video on her relatively soon because I do want to go over Navori on Tristana, but for now, this is what's going on. Now, by the way, I haven't changed the runes on all these guys, so some people might take Sudden Impact. For example, maybe Vayne might go Sudden Impact. I only did the items for all of these champions. So Xayah probably looks something like this. Of course, you can go for this, or you can go for something like this instead, if you so prefer. Depending on what you want. And Corki, nothing has changed, but just, you know, briefly flashing MF. Now I think MF is probably the champion I'm the most confident in, that if any champion was to not go LDR, it would be MF, because Seralda's Grudge is so big for the slow on your ultimate so that they cannot escape. But even in PC, MF goes for LDR, so I can definitely see the same thing happening, but I think she has the highest chance of not going LDR out of any other champion. But personally, I might still go for Seralda's just because without that slow, it's so easy to escape the ultimate. No point in having extra damage if you're not actually hitting the enemies in the first place, in my opinion. So next up we have Draven, a very easy LDR user. And then we have Ashe. Now Ashe, this is of course a support build. Like crit build, of course you would go for LDR sooner or later. And I like to go for Bork first item on Ashe. So this allows Ashe to get 100% crit at 5 items, whereas last time I used to only have 75% crit at 5 items. And Varus doesn't go for LDR because he doesn't build crit, so the build stays the same with Varus. Ezreal as well does not actually go for LDR because he doesn't build crit. Again, Ezreal video should be coming out. I think I'll release this video before the Ezreal one, so I'm gonna push back the Ezreal video. So Ezreal video is coming out in like 2 days time after you see this. Samira, again, another very easy LDR user. Of course, the order of items can be interchanged around depending on the match. And Caitlyn, you guys have seen that already. And Senna, I haven't really changed Senna's build, but I guess you could go for LDR if you wanted to. And Senna has a lot of varying builds now. Senna has so many like items you can go for, which is kind of the issue here with Senna. And now LDR added to that mix. Yeah, so Senna's build very, very variable. Probably the most variable ADC build in my opinion. You can change Senna's build like in the match with a mishmash of the items that she can go for. But yeah, that is basically it for this video. Hopefully you guys understood what I was talking about why LDR is so good, why we're going back to GA now and Bloodthirster is on the decline, and also building the Executioner's Calling in between. And yeah, with all that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and goodbye.